With the success of Frank Miller's Batman Year One, DC Comics were keen to replicate the formula, and so they launched a 4-issue event in Detective Comics running from Detective Comics 575 to 578. This arc would ultimately prove to be quite controversial amongst fandom, most notably because of the imagery and Batman's use of a gun. But one of the standout elements of this story arc is of course Todd McFarlane's art. This short series represents McFarlane's debut drawing this character, and ultimately, with the exception of pin-ups and some cover art, the only work he would do on Batman. And of course, Todd McFarlane's art is very, very striking, and it's very interesting to see his take on Batman on the interior pages of Detective Comics. He has a bold and striking new interpretation of Batman's cape, and of course this would lay the groundwork for similar effects that we would see later in Spawn. But fast forward nearly 30 years, and McFarlane Toys have now released a deluxe special edition Batman Multiverse Deluxe Todd McFarlane Batman Year 2 action figure. Being both a Batman fan and of course a huge Todd McFarlane fan, this for me was high on my anticipation list. Now, being a deluxe figure, of course, he does come with quite a hefty price tag, so today I'm going to unbox him and I'm going to give you my thoughts on if he's worth it. So, starting with the packaging, anyone who's familiar with the DC Multiverse line will recognise the branding of this packaging. You can see it's mostly just a giant window display showing off the figure in all its glory, and I think in this case that's perfectly appropriate. That is what is going to sell this figure after all, and it looks absolutely fantastic in the box. In terms of the banding around the box, obviously it's just a black and white deco with the DC logo on there, so not too exciting, but a slight difference in the bottom right hand corner. We do have that image of the toy and the little logo that says based on the art of Todd McFarlane. Now, despite there not being an awful lot going on in terms of packaging design, I think this is still very, very presentable because of the way the figure is laid out in the packaging. In terms of the side panel, as you can see, this is a big chunky box, so this is quite a significant width for display. Unfortunately, it is rather bland. It literally just says Batman Year 2. So it's a real shame they didn't capitalise on this space and put some nice illustration. Maybe one of Todd McFarlane's images would have been really, really nice here. And then finally on the reverse we have again a photo of the toy, not a lot of text. They have created a sort of diorama by creating that moon effect behind him. Of course it looks fantastic, but again a bit bland in terms of the rest of the packaging. There are some images there of other figures in the line, but that's about it. So of course the whole idea of this deluxe figure is that they tried to capture Todd McFarlane's art in the figure itself, which could be difficult to do, but of course they focused on the cape to recreate that very iconic image that we see in Detective Comics, and I think they've done a really fantastic job. This sculpting and moulding is really, really excellent, and I have to say, to be honest, I actually think they've slightly improved upon it. If you'll notice, it's not 100% accurate, especially if you look at the shoulders. You can see there's actually more of a curve, more of a pinch on the action figure, which I think is actually really effective and looks really good, but it actually wasn't there in the original image. Also, I should point out that this cape obviously is a very hard plastic. This isn't a rubber, and it's not even a malleable kind of plastic. Like, there's no give on this. This is absolutely solid, rock solid in fact. So that obviously helps it hold its shape and is plainly meant to be put in one position on display. And to help it stay upright, there are a couple of peg holes and a big pole that goes in to secure the cape on the interior to hold it in place there. So as you can see one of the poles there. That's just supporting this figure, helping it stand up. But I have to say the sculpting is excellent. I think they've done a really nice job with this cape, and I think they've complemented it beautifully with that paint wash, adding some of that darker blue sweep there. Really enhances this and makes it look really effective and right off the page. And like I said, actually slightly enhances what we saw on the page. Now, of course, as a consequence of the hard plastic cape, you can't really pose this figure in any way except for the head. You can still move the head from side to side if you wish. There are also numerous pegs on the base diorama that they provide, and these of course slot into the peg holes on the figure's feet to help support the character standing up. And speaking of the base diorama, they've done a very, very nice job of replicating the graveyard scene that we see in Todd's art. Now, it is a little bit different. They've taken a little bit of creative license, but again, I think it works perfectly well, and in some cases, actually actually enhances it. So for example, we do have this rather wonderful cross, which is a nicely different coloured piece. Obviously that is a brown against the heavy greys and obviously the blue of Batman. So again, this adds a nice contrast, it makes it visually interesting, and it's very nicely sculpted. It obviously looks a little bit worn down, which is quite nice. And then on the base here we see obviously some of these gravestones. Again, I don't believe we see this in the actual issue, but again, they've taken a creative license and I think it's a very nice touch. We can see Jason Todd, we can see Selina Kyle, the Waynes, the Gordons, in fact virtually all of the Batman family, which adds a nice creepy somber tone, and it's just a quite interesting take, and I think they've done a really nice job of this. I think it's very, very effective. But in their infinite wisdom, McFarlane Toys don't leave you with just a figure that you can put in one position. They of course give you options to have a fully posable action figure as well. So they give you a soft cape and a pair of arms to allow you to create all sorts of different looks for this figure. Now, the head sculpt for this figure I think is very, very nicely done. Again, it has captured the look of Todd McFarlane's art, I think, here. I think they've done a very nice job of this. The ears are obviously elongated. The colouring is very, very nicely done. There's a slight wash running through it, so it's not just a vibrant bright blue, but there's actually a hint of a darker shadowing going on, which is really nice. I think the way they've shaded the cheeks is very well done as well, and the eyes particularly, having the white in there, but then having the black shading around them is really effective. They've done a wonderful job of this. The cloth cape is a wonderful texture. It feels very nice. It's a slightly stretchy cotton material, but it feels very silky against the hands, which is lovely. It looks very, very nice, and of course it is big enough to allow you to drape it right around him, but you can also fold it back if you want as well to reveal the bat symbol underneath and his costume there, which looks really good. So I think they've done a very nice job of the cape. It isn't articulated, there's no wires in it, so you can't pose it in any way, but I think they've done a very, very nice job of it. And in terms of the sculpting of the bat symbol, that is a separate sculpting. It hasn't just been painted on, so it is slightly raised off the chest, and then it's been very carefully painted with that bright yellow and deep black. So all of this looks very, very nice. Now, one thing I did want to point out on mine is the quality control of the cape. Now, I don't know whether I've just been unfortunate, but as you can see here, the cape has come away from the plastic cowl. As a result, it looks very untidy, a bit clumsy, and of course it makes me very dubious about positioning it too much for fear that the rest of it might come away as well. Needless to say, I'm very disappointed with this. On the positive side, not all is lost though, because we do have the option to flip the cape back like this, and I think it looks pretty cool when you do. Now, his arms are separate pieces that have to be snapped into place. Now, again, I definitely had an issue here. One of them fitted into place perfectly well, no problem whatsoever. The other one, however, would not go in after much perseverance, and there was a danger that I was going to snap off the joint, the connecting joint there. So in the end, I had to opt for a little bit of blue tack to hold it in place, which again smacks of a real issue with the quality control here. And to be honest, for a figure at this price tag, I wouldn't expect that. So I'm very, very disappointed. But on the plus side, the sculpting and the moulding and the actual joints themselves all look very, very nice. They look very presentable, and I think they've done a very nice job of replicating a very comic book accurate Batman. So what's the articulation like? Well, he has a ball joint in the neck, so of course he can spin his head right the way around. He can also look up and down, and of course he can move it from side to side. So all in all, a pretty nice range of motion here. No hindrance to this headpiece whatsoever, which is fantastic. Now I'm going to have to demo his right shoulder this time because of course the left shoulder is the one that doesn't click into place properly. So he does have a ball joint in the shoulder piece, provided you could get it in there to work properly. So he can lift his shoulder right the way up and out, which is great. Of course there is a complementary bicep swivel, which is fantastic. Double jointed elbow, so he can get his arm crooks right the way back there. And then of course there is another ball joint in the wrist. So again, he can hinge his wrist forwards and backwards and spin it right the way around. The ball joint is a little bit incongruous, it's a little bit obvious at the wrist there, but I would rather have this in order to have the fantastic range of motion than not. He has a ball joint in the chest area, so he can lean from side to side and spin from side to side as well, which is great. Mine is a little bit stiff, but there's definitely a healthy range of motion here. And of course it is all wonderfully supported by a ball joint in the waist area, which allows Batman to be able to fully rotate from side to side, lean from side to side, and of course bend forwards and backwards. So a really nice healthy range of motion all in all. There's a hinge joint in the hips, allowing the legs to kick out to the side and kick forwards and backwards, but it's all nicely disguised by the blue pants, which are a separate piece which go over them, and does a very good job of hiding this. Now of course the legs also have a a double jointed knee, allowing the legs to kick right the way back, which is great. And then there is a pin swivel at the ankle, allowing the foot to arch forward and backwards, pivot from side to side, and then there's also toe articulation as well. In terms of extras though, he doesn't come with an awful lot, but there are a couple of little goodies. He does come with an extra pair of hands and a batarang. And the batarang is quite a nice piece. It is one chunky blue batarang, again what we see in the comic books. Quite nice to see this. They're usually black in toy form, so pleasing to actually have a blue one. And it's quite a good size as well, so it looks quite threatening when it's in Batman's hand there, and he does hold it perfectly well there, and it looks really good, I have to say. So, in terms of final thoughts, well, for me, surprisingly, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I so desperately wanted to give this figure 5 stars. There's so much about it that I love. I think the diorama base is really fun. I think they've done a very good job of that. I think the figure itself is excellent. I love that they've got a very accurate Todd McFarlane Batman on the market. I love the colours. I love the fact that he has that fantastic display with that plastic cape, but then it also has the option to have the flexible cape. Looks really, really good. I love that he comes with that big, chunky blue batarang, and I think the overall look of this Batman with the elongated ears is really authentic. All of this stuff is wonderful. So why the low star rating? Well, simply because of those quality control issues. There's 2 glaring ones, and I can't really forgive it, I'm sorry to say. First of all, obviously having that arm that doesn't slot into place means I can't really make the most of the whole point of this, being able to pose him in different positions if I'm not using that big hard plastic cape. And then the other crucial piece, of course, is the cape itself. The soft cape is coming away from the actual collar piece of the cowl, and it just doesn't look right. It's very fiddly, and it shouldn't happen. This figure's at quite a high price point. Considering other figures in this line, it's roughly double the cost of one of those, so it's not right that there's these severe issues. And I fully appreciate I may have just been super unlucky, but I'm guessing if it happened to me, it's probably happened to others as well. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.